All right. Welcome, everybody. We have a special guest, Dr. Mac. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be diving into, I'm really excited about not only because it's summertime, building on our summertime series around building systems, but specifically, especially with you here, Dr. Mac, we're going to be diving into a little bit about where public health meets health and wellness, at least from the coaching side on our end. But before we dive into that, I kind of wanted to give you the platform and just say, please, introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and then I'll start pinning you with questions. And again, to introduce for everybody, if you have questions or watching this live, feel free to drop questions. Or if you end up watching the replay of this, wherever you're watching it, also drop questions. We're going to circle back. We're going to dive into things and we'll be able to follow up and circle back. But that being said, Dr. Mac, I'll let you kind of take the stage and introduce yourself, please.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Coach Mikal and Life of Fitness for having me tonight. And I'm really happy to be here. And it's been great meeting you. And coming in, so just a little bit of my background. I have a doctorate in public health and a master's in public health as well. I've spent about 5 years in infectious disease and a little over 10 years working in chronic disease, mainly cancer prevention, and within that working a bit on obesity and how food affects our health. And that's what I wrote my dissertation on as well. So it's an area of specialty for me. So I also live in Asheville, North Carolina, and this is where I work from, and I'm the owner of the company Dr. Mac Superfoods, which I think is a manifestation of my years of experience and expertise, and a big part of my diet.
Yeah, we were just kind of talking about that before we went on, and that's something I'm really excited to dive into, not just with your professional and academic and vast experience in the public health space, but in the health policy space and a variety of kind of experiences there, but also how it led you to the overnight oats and the actual literally just busyness of life, bandwidth as you're going through things. A lot of, honestly, the audience watching and even the people I get to support and our team gets to support can relate to not having a lot of bandwidth or time, or again, as you were mentioning, you were getting your finishing up your PhD while also physically preparing from a marathon to even the training side of it, all of that. So yeah,
working
working. Yeah. All of those pieces. So, I'd love to maybe curious if it feels good to start there, because then there's a lot of interesting, I think, dynamics to what you mentioned with whether it's obesity and the public health policies and what came up in your dissertation to also what lends to what you're doing with superfoods and overnight oats.
Sure. My brand story about how I turned overnight oats into a product to sell mainly comes from building systems in my life for convenience. I was, again, working on my dissertation. I was working full time and I was training for a marathon. I was running a lot, hitting a lot of miles, right? And a lot of miles every week. So I just needed to hit the ground running literally every day. And I didn't have time for a bunch of meal prep and cleanup and really thinking. On my weekdays, I wanted to be on autopilot from the moment my eyes opened with stable, healthy energy. And so I would make big batches of overnight oats every Sunday. And then every morning I got up, I'd put different fruit or nuts on it and just kind of switch it up a little bit, but I had a base to work off of. So that pretty much solved 4 breakfasts out of my week. Then from my public health background, I knew all the good stuff that was coming with whole rolled oats. They're recommended by the American Heart Association as a way to manage cholesterol and have good heart health. They're recommended for good heart health, not quick oats, but the whole rolled oats because of all that fiber and other minerals and such in them. So.
Yeah. So, and that's, I think, a really interesting piece is the combination of nutrition value combined with the accessibility and ease of, I'll say, integration into life. So that's where I kind of wanted to maybe take a step back and tag in also another one of your kind of pieces of insight I think is really valuable, whether it comes to obesity or chronic disease or just public health in general. I think there's some core themes that at least jump out to me. And I'm curious your thoughts on your own, not only academic, but professional experience on some of the commonalities that come around what we're facing as a society with our health, and whether, again, how that ties into overnight oats or just kind of what you're seeing and the value you'd say for the audience watching.
Yeah, I think I'd like to start on that with just generally what is public health. I think it's
Ooh,
something
yeah.
that that everybody really that most of us don't notice because when it's working,
Yeah.
because it starts in the morning with our water, because it's not making us sick with bacteria or other contaminants, hopefully. And you're brushing your teeth, and like there's all these things that we do that are actually products of public health to maybe even our workplace and work safety standards, environmental health, to then your trip to the doctor's office or your decision to maybe try to get 10,000 steps in and stuff like that. So in public health, we look at populations. We don't look so much at the individual level. So we look at entire populations and we look at population health, but we also look at how disease is prevented, managed, and it's really public health is the art and the science of population health and disease, disability, disease, and death prevention and management. A little bit of a word soup there, but I think it conveys the idea. And my degree is what's called a DrPH, which is called a practical degree. And so we have all this knowledge, new knowledge all the time that our PhDs are getting, which is really important new knowledge, whether it's a new cancer treatment or I would say the GLP-1 phenomena that's happening right now. Like that's all really solid PhD research typically. But the practical degree is how we take this knowledge about the health of populations and translate it often through institutions like the CDC, but also nonprofits, local health departments, and foundations. And I argue that even my company, the Dr. Mac Superfoods, is an example of how translating what we know about what I know and what I've learned, and even more important, as I start working with other experts and pulling them in, I'm starting to work with a certified nutritionist, leaning on their expertise on population health and nutrition to inform things like my products. And so that's that translation from knowledge to from what we know to what we're doing, where the DrPH of the doctorate in public health is really critical. Because we all know that we should exercise a certain amount every week, or that we should stay away from those sweets, and but we might not necessarily do it. One of the examples is that I see living here in Asheville is so much that we're supposed to get a lot of exercise every day, and when I go outside, there are no sidewalks. So a public health practitioner might say, well, maybe we should look at the relationship between the accessibility of being able to exercise conveniently versus just saying you're sick because you don't exercise enough.
So that's, I think that's a helpful distinction. I take that and I don't think this is something we've talked about. And to give some context, that's one of the ways that we've been able to connect is through with business and being able to actually offer me coaching and support and consulting, which has already been massively helpful. And like, ironically, when I first went to where I got my bachelor's degree, SUNY Stony Brook, a state's university in New York, I was pursuing honestly public health at one point. And like, so I take for granted that that's actually like something people have like a broader understanding of. But to your point, there's a lot of overlap and aspects. And one of the things I'm curious if this feels true, where like I think of like BMI, for example, as a potential measurable objective data point that is reflective of a mass scale versus like, okay, on the individual level, there could be a like high adaptability. Maybe it doesn't accurately represent in some way body composition, but in the mass population, it's a really valuable tool. So that's a long-winded way of saying that's like one example of things that we can use and tools that have come from potential public health and then applying it not only on the large scale, but like on the individual or smaller scale as well.
Yeah, BMI is a complicated one. And it can be like, I would take what they say about models, health models and stuff is like, they might not always be right, but they should at least be useful. I think there are times where BMI can be useful. In my personal case, I have a BMI over 30. Right. And I don't have, I haven't done my body fat percent count recently, but I'm certain at this moment I'm probably under 20% at least. So, So yeah, it needs, sometimes it's useful, but it's not a universal measure. But yeah, so we have all these measures out there, right? And that's again what us public health practitioners do is look at that, look at measures like that, and critique them sometimes, but also at other times apply them. Again, and I think that's a good example is maybe on the population level, the BMI could be indicative of some important things, but in my personal case, it's an example where it does not. It's not very. It's not a very valid measure of what it's trying to measure.
And that's honestly why I use that one specifically. I think it's an interesting one on a case by case basis, right? Like if you look at you, you're not an overweight or obese or at risk for a lot of the things that, from my understanding of what BMI might potentially be utilized in a medical setting, we're like, okay, if you have a obesity oriented BMI, that the risk factor for a variety of chronic conditions and even comorbidities with that go up. But like, this is an extreme example. I've worked with like football players, for example, that could on paper, they have less than a 15% body fat, but their BMI might put them as an obese person. So, and again, maybe just purely the strain on their heart still has certain risk factors and things like that. But I'm willing to bet the body composition factor accounts and adjusts for that too.
Yeah. And that's all nuanced, right? I think on the whole, we need to be always going back to the big picture stuff. Are you getting enough exercise in? How much are you eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables every day? Are you getting to your 5? There's you getting enough sleep. I call it the fundamentals. Are you sleeping enough? Are you drinking enough water? And are you eating? and then with what you're eating, what do you make sure you're eating healthy? But
yeah, I'll even segue this, like tag in a little bit back and forth to even when I think about systems, right? Whether it's summertime systems or things in general, in even how I approach and our team approaches coaching is looking at what are replicable, sustainable systems. For example, like, hey, having your produce, having your protein, and ideally having some like movement in, being able to get a certain amount of sleep. Again, we can get into the nuances of like what the exact numbers are. And like, that's, again, can get into it, but it's like having some of these baseline sustainable variables becomes massively impactful. Like even for me personally, I'd focused on for a while over like 6 to 9 months, a lot of resistance training and ignoring my cardiovascular health. And now I've been able to like complement and balance that with resistance training 2 to 3 times a week, complemented with like 3 times of more like cardiovascular training as a measurable example. But yeah, I say all that to kind of like pair that to the systems and like to your point, like, hey, we're doing these baseline things, but I'm curious to circle that all the way back. And that's like how you kind of even bring it back to not only overnight oats, but specifically with, I'm always fascinated with obesity, especially with like our society in the country in the last like 30 years. I'm using that as an maybe arbitrary. I don't have that the exact off the top of my head, but there's an interesting trend there. And I'm curious from your thoughts, both academically and professionally. Again, I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit of what has been some key factors aligned. Because like there's all these interesting topics on like, oh, well, it's like big pharma, or it's like, oh, well, like these food industries and all these other aspects. But I think you brought up an interesting point, which is like, what about our accessibility to movement? And what about our actual like accessibility to healthy food? And how does that compare to like price points around that? And also our actual information around those things. So this is just me like going off the top of my head, but I'm curious, obviously, from your experience and your thoughts here, this is like literally what you got to study, I would imagine.
yeah, I spent a lot of time on this and did a lot of work. Again, on the practical side, more so on the research side, and just looking at those massive trends. And unfortunately, what's even more sad is the childhood and early childhood obesity trends, where you look at you can look at the growth charts, and while there are exceptions where children will escape obesity, who are on that trend, as a population, so many will not. And that's just really sad. So much of obesity, I think, is coming. There's a lot of terms about, see if I can think of it. I'll just think out loud right now. But it's like, so what happens when you're eating sugar that has no nutrients? So you're feeding yourself, so you're getting calories, but you're not getting healthy calories. You're not getting nutrient dense food. So you're kind of starving in a way, right? And our body's evolutionary and instinctual urge is just to look at high calorie sugar, is to keep going for that. And I want to give an example right now. I have I love sweets, and I have a problem with sweets. And I'm glad, some people have this problem with alcohol or opioids or other things, right? Mine is like cookies. I have Cookie Monster and I are friends on Instagram as well. But I don't keep any of that stuff in my house. Going back to the systems over willpower, I don't need to expend my willpower on, that ice cream in the freezer or those cookies in the pantry. I just don't bring it into the house in the first place. And that's my system. But yeah, so it's one, I think, again, just sticking to the basics of getting those fruits and vegetables in every day and getting your exercise. And I think it's just really challenging a lot for children, for example, who might be growing up in neighborhoods without sidewalks and going to schools where there's not as much PE or recess or athletics available, where our school lunch system, in my elementary school and stuff, I ate school lunches and they were canned green beans and fruits, and this was in the 80s, so it was a fairly balanced meal. I have spent time as a teacher. Taught my first jobs in my career were as a teacher, and the things that I saw coming through were largely fried and not balanced and not fresh. And there are some great initiatives locally around the country that connect fresh foods and community gardens to schools, but it's packaged, frozen, fried, processed foods. I think are just all great examples of the things that are filling us with nutrient empty calories and causing obesity. Then there's volumes about this as well. I mean, there's flavor engineering going on about how even just like the way they engineer natural flavors is to you take a bite and then you want another bite, whereas if you eat something that's more wholesome, like an orange, it really takes a while for all the flavors to come out in your mouth of the orange, and it's really delicious and rich. You're not trying to like shove it in. So the obesity is very, very multifactorial from the genetic to some point, but to the family level, to the community level, to the state level. So it's a very complex problem that didn't exist to the extent that it did when I was growing up in the 80s. And
yeah, I appreciate that point. It's like, again, there's many variables, but I think you kind of touched on something I think is interesting to like explore, which is not just that it's a 1v1, but willpower versus other things. Like a lot of times I hear the story or the idea or the narrative, or even when I'm talking to someone, like how they feel wrong or bad or guilty, it's like, why can't I just do this? Or why can't I just not have sugar or have soda or something like that? I must be weak or lack discipline, which maybe there's some aspects of like, there's instant gratification that we're attracted to, but also looking at some of the systemic variables around it, whether it's in our environment, whether it's education, whether it's access to resources or information, or a multitude, to your point, of things that I think is the reason I kind of focus on this, is to recognize, like, if someone's watching this and you resonate with, I might feel unhealthy, but I feel wrong or bad about that, recognizing A, you're not alone, and B, it's not just you being weak by itself. There's a multitude of things contributing to this. And I would even invite, I'm curious your thoughts, I'm biased to this, the idea of our relationship to technology and digital devices. Again, ironically, I'm literally doing this on digital devices. It's not saying to vilify it altogether, but I also will give presentations specifically on that and recognize the interesting overlap, not only between obesity, but chronic kind of health conditions, as well as ADHD oriented symptoms. That I'm not saying that ADHD isn't also a component by itself. There's a lot of interesting overlap there. I'm curious if that even comes up in all these things that you explore as well. Yours, just thoughts on that, on the technology and the digital side to all of it.
Yeah, I mean, even for many years, there's I can't remember the exact sequence now, but one of the obesity prevention uh, interventions. Really, I think it was called 5-2-1, and it was like five fresh fruits and vegetables. Limit yourself to 2 hours of screen time a day, or maybe it was 1 hour of screen time a day. It was a really well thought out thing about like how much to eat, how much to exercise, and how much to limit your screen time, because there are studies that do link the amount of screen time we get to obesity. And then there's a lot more studies about like sitting being the new smoking, right? Which is really been one of the things I've really enjoyed, because I spent so many years writing and reading and working behind a desk, and now selling my product and making my product, and being on my feet all the time. I mean, not all the time, but a lot of the time is so rewarding. It feels so good, and I feel so lucky that I'm able to be on my feet as much as I am. But I also know that this decision is good for my health, because I'm moving more. I'm not sitting as much and stuff like that. So, yeah, being sedentary is not good unless you're resting. Resting is part of recovery, and resting is part of training. No matter how you're doing, if you're not getting your rest right, then that can also feed into obesity, right? Because your cortisol levels are out and stuff like that. So rest is important, but there's a lot of information about screen time and health, and it's good to limit it. But I would say it's similar to like cars, right? You can get into a car accident. We try to use our cars responsibly, though. Being on a motorcycle is very dangerous, but if you wear your helmet and don't go really fast, you're less likely to suffer consequences. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that point. I think that's an interesting example too, to your point of like having our relationship and just being awareness. That's like one of the big things when I think about like just a framework when I talk to people in all capacities, is like having a level of awareness, regardless of what it is. And then being able to go to like, what's our intention? If our intention is like, hey, I want to have not only a long life, but I want to have a high quality of life while also having a lot of length to it. And then what actions are going to be related to that framework? Again, like being able to have fiber, being able to have good quality, nutrient dense food options, being able to also have like movement in my life, and also having some sense of fun too. That's like one of the things I appreciate about some of the principles I've learned from other nutrition education is, yes, we have protein, we have produce, but also having pleasure in these three P's that we'll kind of incorporate is like, it's great if you have all of that. And that's what actually bringing it all the way back to even your food and the overnight oats is like, so just to be filled, like Dr. Mac's not paying me. This is not like a sponsored thing. I just genuinely like was able to try it and bought it myself. And this is something I'm going to continue to use. My fiance loves it. She actually really liked she tried the matcha and the cacao as well. Like, so unfortunately she got to it before I did, the regular, and my 1-year-old had it. She got a little like taste of it, our 4-year-old, and then our 5 and 7-year-old as well. So like all of our girls are into it. It's a great way to incorporate, I think, again, options that give you good quality nutrients, being able to have your different vitamins and minerals. But the point of saying all that was actually kind of circling it all the way back to not only how you arrived at overnight oats, but if there was other things you were looking at, because you kind of mentioned like, hey, it's helpful, it's convenient, but I wonder if you experimented with other things, because I think that's an interesting piece to this journey for all of us, whether from obesity to like professional athletes, is like experimenting with different options. And I wonder, what if any other pieces did you experiment with for that breakfast time before you arrived at overnight oats? If anything, that's making an assumption that was like not the first and it just worked for you.
I would have to think. Maybe my brain will think about that while I'm talking. That's a good question, actually, because these ideas don't really just like come out of nowhere, right? Everything builds on something else. There's nothing original. But I think what's critical I want to go back to kind of what you were saying about systems and your exercising. And in your career, I imagine you didn't just be like, oh, I'm going to go run today and I'm going to go do this today and do that today, right? You had a system in place, right? Correct. That held you, that you were able to work within, that was set up, that you either set up or was set up for you or in some collaboration. and you work that system. And that's what I do with I try to do that in every angle of my life, because to the extent possible, because those systems are what make my life more efficient and allow me to do the like 90 million hobbies I have. Is that I don't have to think about breakfast today. I've got it covered. I don't have to on Sunday. Every Sunday I go to the big box retailer and the farmer's market, and I buy big amounts of vegetables. And on Sundays or Mondays, I roast them in the oven, and I've got containers full of vegetables. And when I'm taking a break and I need lunch or it's post workout, I'm not thinking about it during my work week. I've prepared, I have an existing system. I've prepared that system. I implement that system, and then I do it again. And I really find that when I miss my meal prep Sunday on my healthy food, and I have to use mental energy to figure out what I'm going to eat, it either one massively reduces my productivity, or two massively reduces the balance in my bank account. So those are two big motivators, but I can't always work the system, but that's what I try to do. And I think I'd been eating this meal for a long time. I think my biggest challenge was turning it into a shelf-stable product that you could have in the pantry for like a year. I didn't like all of my ingredients are real foods. All of my ingredients are whole foods. There's no protein powder in it. There's no sugar substitutes. So vanilla, for example, was my hardest ingredient to find. And because like I didn't know anything about vanilla, to be honest, other than that it's a great ingredient in cookies. So I found powdered or ground vanilla beans. Is the vanilla flavoring. It's just real vanilla, authentic, real organic vanilla. So I've had to learn a lot about how food manufacturing works and how ingredients work and work together. I was making it like the cinnamon flavor. I really like to take, I still do this. I'll take half a cup of Greek yogurt, half a cup of water, shake it up, and just turns into water. And then I soak the cinnamon flavor in it it's really heavy in chia, and the yogurt and the chia seeds just create like a pudding. And then you're getting additional protein from the Greek yogurt, and you're getting great probiotics. So, it's just like a win-win. So that's the way I ate it for years. And then each ingredient has so many, every ingredient I've thought about at length. For example, the chia seeds and I think the flax seeds have omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in them. That's good for heart health, right? The chia seeds and all that fiber make you poop. It's really good for colon health. And as a runner, and I also sell it, like I've been going to running expos, when you're doing long runs in the morning and having like a reliable cleansing of your system at like a set time every day, whether you're on a bike or out running, it allows you to just kind of literally lighten your load and be out there for a long time. And again, it's great for colon health, and you just feel better. And then the pumpkin seeds, there's ingredients in the pumpkin seeds that have shown to help manage prostate health and a lot of other things too. And so every ingredient in there, I've intentionally chosen for a purpose, especially the seeds. And which one am I missing? Again, oats are great for cholesterol management. They're also a great source of fiber, and they're recommended by the American Diabetes Association as a healthy source of carbohydrates. Although everybody reacts to oats a little bit differently. So if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, you obviously need to be monitoring that at the individual level. Going back to public health, we look at populations, not how things affect every individual. That's the role of a different part of the system, the clinical part of the system. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I haven't had a chance to talk to in quite a while, honestly, when it comes to guessing, even like glycemic index and glycemic load. And again, even with those things, they're going to vary person to person, right? Like if you had a continuous glucose monitor, for example, for me versus my fiance, we could eat the same thing. We might get different readings on it, but I think that's one thing I appreciate about oats for a very long period of time. And also the interesting combination, to your point, of ingredients, not only just oats by themselves, but as you add nuts and seeds and add different layers of fiber and protein, how that impacts the glycemic load index. And for those like watching, maybe you're not, I'm not saying you need to watch your glycemic load index, but it can be an insightful piece on how your body responds to carbohydrates and how it turns it into sugar, and how you might want to time those things accordingly.
And there are clinical studies that actually show for high intensity HIIT training, especially. I've read some studies where because what's happening with oats and the fiber is as they go into your digestive tract, they're not dropping the glycogen into your bloodstream all at once like you would get from a soda. What's that?
Like gummy bears. I think of like, there's this on the like bodybuilders would be cliche, like eating gummy bears pre-workout to get that like sugar spike. But again, it's shotgun into your system within maybe 20 to 60 minutes or some frame. And like, if that, and then you're not necessarily being able to utilize it in a sustained fashion throughout your workout.
And the oats release the glycogen through your intestines at a much slower rate. And then depending, as you said, the interactions with protein and fiber affects that, as well as the individual's metabolism. I've started communicating and working with a nutritionist locally who's an expert in those things, which is great because I am not. I don't have that expertise. I can read about it and think about it, but it's not my expertise. And I think that's where, as public health professionals, we say, I know what I know, and this is what I'm trying to do, and these are the experts I need to lean on to make sure that a responsible practitioner and ensuring the best knowledge and best outcomes for in my case customers.
Yeah, that's something I appreciate as I was younger, when I was younger in my personal training career, even before I got into other different aspects of like health coaching and different types of specialties, was I used to think that I had to know everything and like, I had to answer the questions. I realized actually, ironically, as I've gotten more experience or different knowledge bases, I'm like, I don't need to know everything. And that's the point of having professionals to reference and like refer out to, or to be able to say, hey, let me actually go ask someone, and being able to just be aware of that. And that's something I always really appreciate, especially as I've noticed there's a common theme is like the academic and professional experience tends to go up. The willingness to be wrong and challenge ourselves or oneself, or especially for you, that's my experience of you too, is like the willingness to be wrong and not be attached to like, I'm right. As it were. And then being able to like be transparent about that too. There's been times actually on content I've misspoken, even let's say about amino acids. I was talking about essential versus non-essential amino acids, and I misrepresented the two. And I'm like, I'll come back and say, hey, I was actually wrong. I misspoke, or some version of that. But I wonder, there's a long way of actually asking, have you noticed that's always been a natural attribute for yourself, or has that come on as you've gone down this pursuit and you've been kind of curating your ability and willingness to be wrong? Because I think that's a really obviously impactful attribute in this world.
Oh, I would say a couple things. I think that the phenomena you're talking about goes back. The first quote is probably by Socrates, and I can't quote it off the top of my head, but I'm sure if you Google Socrates and the older I get, the less I know, or something like that. The more you realize how much there is to know as well. And then I think as an entrepreneur and a founder, which I think you can definitely identify with, is learning and failing is integral to the process. If you're not failing sometimes, and if you're not wrong sometimes, you're probably wrong. But it's our ability to learn quickly from those moments that I think determines our own success. And for me, I definitely the process of going through the doctoral the hoops to get a doctorate, and my various committee members from various disciplines, not just public health. And public health is an interdiscipline anyway. It has influence from everything from the biological sciences to, like I was saying, environmental science to medical. I mean, it's a very there's a lot of variability within the field, but that's a very common thing in the preparation and defense of dissertation, is to say, I don't know the answer to your question, and and I will be happy to get back to you. Or we'll be happy to identify somebody who can answer your question. So,
Yeah. Go back to and find and be able to just own that, and being able to also, I think the interesting thing about being able to receive feedback as well, from my understanding, not that I've had to go through a dissertation, but of working with clients and professionals and colleagues that have, and almost seeking that out and being, I'm not saying everyone's this way because that's obviously not a fair statement, but being somewhat even graceful with that and actually seeking it out and saying, hey, like I actually want to see and test this out. And whether it's like the scientific method, as it were, not only to see where there may not be truth to this, but can I replicate it and where we can see that. The reason I'm going down the time was I even tied that back into with your overnight oats of saying, okay, like to your point, in this process of like justifying every ingredient, having value, nutrient dense value to the ingredients you're selecting. And that's something I really appreciate. And honestly, like from a taste perspective is great. Like my kids pass it on that perspective, but even being able to look at it from like an objective, measurable, like value add orient to it. If I'm being mindful of like, nowadays I don't honestly focus on counting calories as much. I'm not saying we don't, because calories in, calories out is like a thermodynamic aspect where you do want to be mindful of, but being aware of like, hey, how do I feel? Satiety. And that's where I think even that as a fuel source is massive, because the satiety level with it is really impactful. Like I usually don't even finish the whole, I'll make the whole bag and then I prep it, but usually it's going to last me 2 meals. I'll break it up into 2 pieces. And then that's also, I'll add in, like after you mentioned me, like adding in some berries, walnuts has been a great one. So I just want to
another powerhouse for heart health, walnuts, but
and acknowledge just that ability to do that. And this is where I kind of wanted to, because you mentioned too, also being in Asheville, right? And we're in like the local area together. And I think it's an amazing community of like endurance athletes and a variety of capacities, like climbers and different people and individuals. But for those that either are watching this in the Asheville area and, or even someone that's not in the Asheville area, but they're interested in trying out the oats, like I can have the answer of like going to the website and those things, but where would you prefer people to like try this, reach out and communicate and connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Dr. Max Superfoods. My website is drmaxsuperfoods.com, and Facebook the same, and it's DrMAKS superfoods.com. Maybe I should put that in the chat.
I have that in the description as well, but I'm also going to put it up. I'll actually put the link. Hold on. I have it pulled up right here. I'll put it in the comment. We'll highlight it really quick. So and the reason I'm asking, if someone does want to order something, they can go on the website right here and have it.
Yes, and the link you just posted gives a 20% discount for your first order. And if you just want to try it, and you can select any of the products and at that discount price. Locally, I think the most reliable place to get my products has been the French Broad Food Co-op.
Nice.
And I'm in a number of other places in the region, but I don't have that list off the top of my head. My real let's talk about learning. My goal this winter, when I wasn't working at farmers markets, you can also find me at farmers markets. I love farmers markets. I'm going to be working at
a great place
4 farmers markets in the next 4 days. Weaverville,
nice.
Biltmore Square, East Asheville, and Asheville City Market. I'll be at each one of those. You can come by, say hi. And also I have tastings out at those markets as well, so you can try the products. But so I made a decision kind of, I was starting to get into distribution, and that was my goal, was to get a high number of stores. And through coaching and feedback I got, this month I just repositioned my whole strategy around that, where I really want to focus on 3 to 4 major retailers, and the biggest and most recent one, I'm not in there yet, but we're doing the paperwork, and they've said they won't take my products, is Earth Fare. So Earth Fare you'll be able to get them there. And I'm at Food Matters in Brevard and Morganton. So I'm focusing on larger distribution and less overall stores. And also in the coming month, I'll be releasing 2 new flavors. One is going to be a mocha. These are a little more fun. The first year I just wanted to start out with like cinnamon as kind of the classic, right? Oh, yeah. So the mocha has the equivalent of half a cup of coffee in it per serving. I found a delicious coffee, and it pairs great with the chocolate, and it's just really well balanced. It's my favorite, and it does combine that get up and go from your cup of coffee with your food. It is. I can't drink my full cup of morning coffee when I eat the mocha too, because I'm just like too much. And I'm collaborating with Full Moon Tea Company, which is a local tea company, and to do it's a London Fog, which is like an Earl Grey tea with lavender, and it's also really delicious. And yeah, and so there's the next two that are coming out, and then later in the summer, I'm under development right now is an athletic blend, or like an athlete's blend, and it's really it's going to be delicious, because delicious is a really big part of my brand, is because I eat this every day, and I love it, and if I don't love it, I'm not going to be able to to sell it, or I'm not going to feel good about frankly selling it. So with my athletic blend, I'm upping the sugar a little bit, because most people say that the product is actually a pretty much a low sugar. What they love about it is it's not too sweet. Yeah. So, but for the athletes, I'm gonna up the sugar for them and add collagen, and add. I found a pure evaporated coconut water. So you're mixing then that extra protein from the collagen with the electrolytes and potassium stuff that you're actually getting from just evaporated coconut water, to hopefully help you have, well, in my case, have a better run, better recovery, because you're not getting as dehydrated and stuff like that. So that's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I think of it not only from, I appreciate your like the athletic component, because I think of specifically a lot of, obviously my background's in the martial arts world, in the combat space, and an interesting side that I saw from the UFC PI put out, the UFC's Performance Institute. They have a lot of amazing research, and I have a lot of amazing like just colleagues and people in that space complimenting with their research. And it's about almost 80% of combat athletes show signs of disordered eating. And the reason I bring that up is because their lack of either awareness or access to resources, because they have to quote unquote make weight, but something like this, that's easy, that's simple, and that also can taste great, and then give them the energy they need, being able to give them the nutrients they need, the electrolyte balancing, especially when they have massive amounts of sweat and fluid loss and all of those pieces. That gets me really excited. It makes it, I go back to the accessibility that you mentioned before, that I think is really impactful. But again, it's not just for like the combat sport athletes out there, for all athletes. And even those that are just like, again, consistently training, that's one of the things I see with a lot of our, not only clients, but the people I try and talk to and explore, is like, at some point we stop playing games. And I think being able to play sports and have fun and have joyful movement, whether if it's running or run, and that's what's cool about our area, right? Like think of how many cool outdoor activities when the seasons afford, kayaking and canoeing and being able to hike and being able to bike and being able to run, to your point, like doing all these fun things. So I really appreciate that part of it too, for the movement side.
So I've just signed up for a couple of weeks ago, I signed up for the River Arts District 10K and half marathon.
Nice.
I'm running the 10K. This is the first race I've run since I moved to Asheville a couple of years ago. Just for a number of reasons, I just haven't been running as much. And but I've continued my lifting while I'm running and training. And I'm like, back to your point of like, when you're going from like recommended levels of physical activity to starting to add like I'm probably going to be at like a 20-mile week this week, maybe a little bit more, but like I'm hungry. Like I will eat, but I'll eat that too, right? And so I was like taking my systems, thinking today when I was coming home, and I was like, my last system is not working for this level of physical activity. I need something else. So that's so it's
But the cool thing, I think, and this is where my mind goes, is even with like the overnight oats things, like being able to add it to smoothie variation, to being able to add even to like, honestly, I want to call it dessert options. Like I've seen interesting like brownie variations where you can use oat oriented things, and being able to do that. Like, again, I'm going into maybe a separate category, but I think there's a lot of really cool possibilities and integrations for what you already have.
I love hearing what people do. I add it to smoothie. What I don't eat at breakfast, when it gets a little bit hotter. Since I moved here from Louisiana, this is still cold for me. So talk about electrolyte balancing. Running in that summer heat is something. But yeah, so when I start my fruit smoothies, I always take and add what I don't eat for breakfast into that. And my friends who have kids, they take the chocolate flavor and they're like, "Oh, you want your smoothie this morning? It's chocolate." And they like, "Oh, sure, I'll take it now." But yeah, there's lots of great stuff. You can versatility. I love hearing what people are doing with the product, and send me ideas. Like that's like I was saying earlier, like. There's no original ideas. I'm just building off things other people are doing. So,
well, yeah, and I'm excited. The thing we're going to experiment with it over the summer is not only like the smoothies, but also making some dessert options. Like I'm going to call them brownie/muffin oriented types of options that being able to integrate these. Because then the other cool thing that I think about for desserts, because we're actively working on our dessert cookbook, is again, blood sugar regulation side of things. So for integrating these things that are going to actually have a contributing factor along with is going to taste good and just fill it out. I think it's such a massive win-win. Combined with also like the simple act of just like, I learned to slow down and enjoy my food. But like you mentioned this all the way in the beginning too, right? Like with our food and flavorings, like, hey, enjoy each bite, take those bites, slow down and chew them. And I eat very fast. So, and I think that also ties into like environmental things and feeling like we're in a rush, and even on devices, like maybe I'm like on my phone while I'm eating, trying to put out a post or whatever the thing is. I've learned to like put the phone down, put the laptop down, sit with our food. That's one of the things I actually appreciate about the oats is like, I use both my hands because I hold the bowl, I use the spoon, and like not having all the devices as it were.
I've taken, I'll give you one more, I'll give you a counterproductive to mindful eating piece of advice that I use. I add a full cup of milk, or sometimes I'll add like half water, half milk to the oats, so they're a full liquid, and I just put them in a jar and drink them, and I don't have to deal with the spoon and the bowl. I just drink them right out of the container I make them in, and they go in the car with me. A lot of times I'll do half pre-workout, half post-workout, and but I think, I'm speaking, I've been in conversation with a nutritionist who I'm hoping to work more with, and we should talk again about that, about what you were just talking about related to fiber and like that protein balance and desserts. And because as I understand it, the fiber does hold back or inhibit that rapid release of glycogen when you do have sugary stuff. One of my new products coming out also is actually a chia pudding. I didn't mention that. That's I'm doing 2 flavors of chia pudding. And so that is a dessert product, and it does have sugar. And I was asking the nutritionist, I was like, what should I target? What level of sugar should I target on this ingredients label? So I still feel that it's healthy, but without and all my sugars are like maple sugar or coconut sugar anyway, and so we had like a discussion about that. So I think I'm going to get a lot more into the weeds about that specific phenomena of dessert, right? And what can we be having with desserts to make them healthier for us? So.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'll continue to explore, is again how we mix and match different things to impact the glycemic load, glycemic index, the release of it, the absorption of it. Again, as it varies person to person, there are some obvious commonalities and things that, from the dietitians I've talked to in our team, and like I'd love to talk to your nutritionists as well and just share ideas and pick different things, because then we can also add it to our cookbook and add it to the dessert book and be like, hey, really cool things to add. Because that's what we're like. I love peanut butter cups. That's like my personal favorite. Like almond butter, I've switched to mostly almond butter. I'll still use peanut butter sometimes, but mostly it's like an almond butter or some kind of different variation of a nut butter.
With almond butter with that chocolate cacao flavor oats are really good.
Yeah, that's what I love. So with the overnight oats, what I've done is I'll take that, and I haven't tried it with the cacao yet because Carrie actually completely housed it. But even with taking the almond butter and mixing it and let it melt.
Oh yeah,
so good. And then even drizzling a little bit of like some melted chocolate, like 70% cacao or more, like melt a little bit of it, because then I'll dip like berries or fruit. Now it'll be sometimes a dessert or like a blueberry bark kind of a thing. And And then just having that is really nice. So being able to explore my point of saying all this is the different desserts. That's the next thing we're going to be rolling out. I think that'll be a really fun thing to integrate. And yeah, I'm just excited. So one of the things though, this is what I'm continuously working on is, to your point, like having feedback and giving what we want, but not overly complicating things. So that's like a really cool piece to just intuitively add with it. But yeah,
it's an art to make things just simple enough. It takes a while, but
takes a lot of intention from my side, at least, especially I've noticed with my own brain chemistry and predispositions of things, which is also why I appreciate you and bring it full circle. So I'm going to start to wrap things up. Well, I'd love to have you come back on, Dr. Mack. We definitely have lots of questions and different things. We had some comments come out. I just want to like shout out to everyone. Just really, they were just saying, hey, and like hello from Turkey. And then we had some questions, just being able to come in and seeing more, and just honestly a couple people are just saying, hey, so hello everyone, thank you for the follows I saw come in while we were doing this. And the one thing I always like to ask when I have a guest come on is if we're going to leave the viewer watching with some actionable takeaway. The goal I try and take away from every piece of content or podcast or thing that we do is like we talk about a variety of things, but like one action oriented item. And I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. So the goal of the question is like, what's one action oriented item someone can take away? And I'm going to just try and see. I'm also going to use this as a moment to pause, to A, give you a little bit of time to think about it, and B, see if we have additional questions, because I saw something. Yeah, someone's just saying, hey. But I'm curious your thoughts on what you would invite from one thing someone can take action on today that can be impactful for their health. I know it's a broad inquiry.
So I'll say two things that are fairly congruent because they're kind of the same thing. Well, I guess one is like this I got from meditation. You don't have to stop something to start something. If you can, so it's like make excuses to do something, not why you're not. And so it takes a lot of effort to stop doing something. But if there's a healthy habit you're trying to implement, you might, and you don't have to stop doing something to do that healthy habit. Eventually, by introducing more healthy habits, the unhealthy ones won't have a place at the table anymore. So take action. Make an excuse to take action and to do what you've been wanting to do. And that unhealthy thing, or that thing that you've been wanting to stop or quit, you might just find that you're doing so many healthy things that it just doesn't have a space in your life anymore.
Oh, that's just, I really appreciate. So I'm gonna. Do you mind if I offer what I'm hearing you say is like a different principle we'll actually like utilize in coaching is, from what I've seen in behavior change and in different ways, even related to like cognitive behavioral therapy and like how we view our quote unquote negative experiences, is like, instead of focusing on removing things from our life, which can have a lot of resistance and weight, add something to your life. So, okay, adding that healthy focus, adding that healthy habit, adding that action, that joyful thing. And guess what? By the time you continuously stack it, the table, I really appreciate how you word that, like the seats at the table will be full, that the other things may not have room anymore and they'll start to fall off naturally. Not that you're forcing them out. And that's something I've offered people, like, hey, let's say you want to have dessert. Cool. Let's just add a little bit of protein and fiber. Add something with protein and fiber. Maybe it's your overnight oats, or maybe adding in something like that. And then guess what? If you still want to have something, you're still hungry, have it. But more than likely, I'm willing to bet, given enough time, as you add these things, it will start to dissipate off.
Fill your house with fruits and carrots and celery sticks. And when you've got a sweet tooth, you can eat as much fresh fruits. And that's my rule. I can eat as many apples and bananas and oranges and celery sticks as I can fit in me. You know, I can eat as much of that as I want, but man, I just don't have any junk food in the house. So.
Yeah, that's a great call. And to your point, like, can really fill, and then that doesn't feel as restrictive either. So thank you for the awesome insight, Dr. Mack. I appreciate you. And also thank you for taking the time. Again, just to recap for everyone, we have everything in the description below, but for the website, if you want to try the overnight oats, it's Dr. Mack. So that's spelled N-A-K, ends with an S, and then superfoods.com. In the description, we also have a code so you'll get a discount. And then for those watching the replay, feel free to come back, comment, ask questions. Make sure you're following Dr. Mack as well across all the platforms. And we'll have more follow-up when you're watching the replay, you're watching up whatever chop chopped up version. Let us know that you're watching it. It's always great to hear from you guys. And yeah, it's going to do it for today. And it's actually perfect timing because ironically, my fiance just got home with the kids from food shopping. So that's also my cue. I can see them out the window. They got in the house. It was perfect timing to just now I'll get out of yeah, get in and get my exercise and my movement in for the day.
Thanks so much, Michael. It was great, great being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Take care, y'all.
Bye-bye.